Uganda continues with the polling exercises. Tomorrow we will get to see the election of district councillors, chairpersons, mayors and lot mayors all through under comprehensive coverage.
Mildred, what the lawyers have said in court is that it's a legal requirement that any of the accused persons must appear in courts in person, especially when they're being tried in such matters like treason that Dr. Kizza Besigye and his co-accused Hajo Bedlutale face in the courts of law. But the bigger challenge today was the failure by Uganda prisons to produce Dr. Kizza Besigye just a day after the Uganda prisons enforced and said that Dr. Kizza Besigye is in proper health. Now, what has been told to the courts of law today from the registrar of the criminal division of the High Court in a letter that she handed over to the Judge Emmanuel Baguma, is that Dr. Kizza Besigye is unwell, according to the letter in which the Uganda prisons asked that a Zoom provision be made, especially the virtual appearances of court, be made available for Dr. Kizza Besigye and the accused persons to appear in court. That request was rejected by the defense, but also it's not a request that was very much welcomed by the state in this very matter. The defense, led by counsel Arias Lukwago, questioned why Dr. Kizza Besigye was not being brought to courts of law. After all, they had not also been allowed to engage with him in Luzera prison as they had requested earlier in the previous sitting of court. What has been revealed in the courts of law today by the judge was the provision that Dr. Kizza Besigye is unwell, or A1, who is Dr. Kizza Besigye, is unwell. That had been disputed, but now that comes as a confirmation that Dr. Kizza Besigye is unwell and that he cannot be in position to attend the courts of law or even be tried, because a person who the courts cannot substantiate whether he can be able to stand, whether he can be able to sit, whether he can be in position to be in his full faculty, his mental faculty, whether it's in proper position for him to stand trial. All those were questions that were raised by the defense in the courts of law today. But also it was never such a reject for the state, as the state stated to their colleagues at the bar and also to the judge that all they needed was confirmation that indeed Dr. Kizza Besigye. Now, this came with some resistance, or first resistance from the defense, which said how much more did they need to prove that Dr. Kizza Besigye, after all, the state is what is holding Dr. Kizza Besigye. And so that caused a stallment of what should have been scheduling of the treason case today for it to start hearing and move ahead, because the previous court session was all about Dr. Kizza Besigye and his co-accused taking plea, which did not happen because they indeed rejected or declined to take plea or agree or even to deny charges, which the judge chose to say he would take a plea of not guilty in that matter. This case will now be coming back in February 24th, when Dr. Kizza Besigye and Hajo Bedlutale will be in position to come in person, physically, to the courts of law for scheduling to proceed. But what then happens if Dr. Kizza Besigye is not able to come to the courts of law personally and get the matter to be scheduled on that day, or even for hearing to proceed? That is the latest update, Mildred. But what has been confirmed is Dr. Kizza Besigye, from his lawyers and from the letter from Uganda prisons, he's unwell. Back to you, Mildred, at the Political Command Center.
Thank you very much, Shamim Nabakozan. We'll definitely be waiting on how that does get to proceed later on. Let's now continue with more news, reacting to definitely what has just been concluded. That's the presidential and parliamentary polls. The Alliance for National Transformation anti-presidential candidate General Gregory Mugisha Muntu Oyera has called for deeper research into why more than 10 million registered voters failed to participate in the January 15 18th presidential elections. He described this low turnout as alarming and said serious analysis is needed to reverse the country's declining voter participation. And of course, Ramson Muhire did bring us this report.
It is the first time that General Gregory Mugisha Muntu, the ANT presidential flag bearer or candidate, comes out to speak about the elections that were declared last week on Saturday, of course, where President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was declared winner. Now, General Gregory Muntu, of course, believes these are results that were expected given how previous elections have been handled. But, of course, his concern was especially on the voters that did not turn up to vote. And he thinks these need to be understood. An explainer has been made. And, of course, if these numbers are going to be casting their ballot once again. But, of course, he thinks that also the voters must now start taking responsibility of the elections and how candidates get to participate in these elections, especially directly, not just coming to vote, but also things like funding. And of course, we did speak with the general earlier on, and this is what he had to say.
Have a culture where things which happen are well studied. Most times, roles of that nature, if we had resources, what we'd do immediately would be conduct in-depth studies of what's going on in the minds of 10 million voters who didn't show up. Because without research, you are going to be speculating. Sorry. We're going to be, if you don't do research, you'll be speculating. Now, even without resources, we're going to try and reach out and find out, are there universities or are there NGOs that have got capabilities to do research, do deep analysis of what happened, the impact of the commercialized politics. What impact? Immediate and medium-long term. 2, why on earth would 10 million voters not vote? We'd like to go and understand that. So we'll have to give this a bit of time. My hope is that we'll get people who are interested in that. They do analysis, and then it will help us also in planning. How do we move forward? How do we influence mindsets to shift them from where that? Because, for example, if people are operating out of a state of desperation, well, there are those who say elections cannot work. You need to find out. So if elections don't work, what works?
Of course, the details of this particular story we're going to be bringing to you in our subsequent bulletins. That is, we have 4:30, we have 7 p.m. Amasengeje, and of course 9 p.m. live at 9. For now, I get back to you at the Political Command Center.
And now back to the courts of law. Court has set January 28th to rule on the bail application of Sarah Birete, the Executive Director of Center for Constitutional Governance. This follows the prosecution submission opposing the application, arguing that Birete's proposed sureties are not substantial. Daniel brings us the details.
Well, as it stands, Dr. Sarah Birete will spend at least another 7 days in prison after court failed to decide on her bail application. Now, take you back from the last court sitting. Prosecution had asked that it be given enough time to reply to the bail application. Today was the day that they did reply to the bail application, and central to their argument was that Dr. Sarah Birete's sureties were not substantial. To remind you, these include former leader of opposition Winnie Chiza and former ambassador Edith Sempala, and also Power FM managing director Joseph Beyanga. For Winnie Chiza and Edith Sempala, prosecution says that they indicate that they are former at their workplaces, so at the moment they didn't really indicate that they have, at the moment they don't have any form of earning, and they argue that they couldn't be substantial at the moment. But for the defense at the moment, the argument, the disgruntlement is about the time that the judge has asked to be given that 7 days to deliver the ruling. They felt that since the prosecution had presented its side, that it would be good that she delivers the ruling there and then, or at least a day.
The standards and the guidelines on which court is supposed to grant bail are very flexible and liberal. The main criteria is that this person who is granted bail should not run away. That is the only criteria, really, that the Constitution recognizes. To our surprise, after listening to those very simple arguments, both from us and from the state, the trial magistrate has again adjourned for a full week, apparently to write a bail ruling. The Chief Justice, the retired Chief Justice, himself had made it clear that bail rulings should be delivered there and then, and maybe in worst case scenarios the next day. But here 7 days are gone. So effectively, we are spending 1 full month on a bail application. And in the meantime, our client is in prison as if she's a convict.
Now, going back to conversations around voter participation in the elections, Shema Municipality legislator Dixon Kateshimba has expressed quite concern over the low voter turnout in the recent general elections. He has called for electoral reforms to address the challenges faced by both the politicians and the voters ahead of the next polls. Let's get to speak to him right now from his presence. Very good afternoon to you, Honorable Kateshimba. First of all, we would say congratulations upon your re-election, and let's talk about voter turnout. What do you think is the major problem, especially for the voters in Shema, but also nationwide? And if we're to think about any reforms immediately, what would those be?
Thank you very much, and glad to be back. Regarding the voter turnout, I think first of all we need to have our systems digitized and connected. For example, we need to have the electoral register digitized and connected with the national ID, connected with the other certificates, because what happens is that you have a register and we are calculating the voter turnout based on the register, but within the register, what we establish is that you have people who have passed on, you have people who have migrated to different locations, but the register is not updated. And then you have people who turned 18 in a very short period towards the voting, but they are not in the register. So I think that when we are looking at the voter turnout, if I computed my own area in the municipality, based on the voting, vis-a-vis the register as it was, it shows the voter turnout as around 53%. But when you discount the people who died from the register, from those who migrated, you actually find that the voter turnout from the real voters on the register jumps to around 62%. So there is a need for us to, first of all, the continuous update of the register, so that we have the actual numbers close to the actual voters who will actually vote or participate in the voting on the voting day.
Are you going to engage legislators and other parties in ensuring that these reforms come into play when you get back to Parliament before the next election?
I beg your pardon?
How are you going to make sure that you bring your fellow legislators and yourself into play to make sure that these recommendations come into play before the next election?
I think what the government can do and the Electoral Commission is actually to conduct an evaluation of this whole exercise and then be able to come up with some of the reforms that are necessary. And I believe that also as a party, as NRM, we can make a contribution through our different structures to come up with some of the proposals that can make us better prepared before the next election, because you don't want to deny someone who has turned 18 a month before election from voting, but you also need to have sufficient time for the Electoral Commission to prepare. So some of these things I think can be discussed. We can evaluate the conduct of these elections. But generally, I think that the elections were very peaceful. The Electoral Commission did a good job despite the hiccup with the machines. And the exercise went on smoothly. We have seen everywhere it's come. And so we should be able to commend the EC and the government for the job well done. The other aspect that needs to be looked at is the issue of petitions. You know, we saw the Electoral Commission struggling with a number of petitions, even a week before the voting. People are still petitioning, and some of the petitions are perhaps flimsy. So that's another issue that needs to be looked at, where people are being challenged while their names are already on the ballot papers being printed. So some of these issues need to be properly evaluated so that the government can draw lessons, the Electoral Commission can draw lessons, and where there is need for us to make some amendments in the laws, we can do it as Parliament in the next 5 years to make sure that our process are better and very, very robust.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Dickson Skatishumba, for speaking to us this afternoon. And I think there is a lot of conversation and discussion around voter turnout in the next general elections, having recorded the lowest voter turnout at 52.41% since the lowest that it has been ever since, if we're talking about conversations about multi-party dispensation. Now let's get to move on to Ntungamo, where voting for the district male youth representative and the female representative for persons with disabilities is underway, but quite began late after several eligible voters failed to arrive on time, election officials said. Now, meanwhile, the Electoral Commission is dispatching voting materials ahead of tomorrow's local government council elections across the 812 polling stations in the district. Bridget Nsimenta brings us up to speed with the conversation. Bridget, first of all, let's look at the special interest group elections and how they are going. And then we'll also look at the elections tomorrow that will be at the councils and cities.
Yeah, thank you so much, and good afternoon. I will just be telling you exactly what is on ground and how the activity started off very late, actually, by 10 or even by 11. Voting had not started. As you can just representative that is already unopposed. But then for the male, which they are voting for today, this will see Javira Nkwasiwe, a PFF candidate, then also Edwin Akandwanaho from the NRM. Those are the people that will be voted for just right here behind me. And then also for the PWD's representative, it will also see two candidates being voted for today, and that is Kobusinja Deborah, who is from NRM, and Musim Sechi Asumpta, who is also an independent candidate. These are the people being voted for today. And also someone might ask, which people or which category of people votes for these particular groups of the people or particular groups of leaders? These are not just voted for by any other person or by the public, just because you can see also in the public that in the background that the people are actually few, and the EC says these people or these candidates are voted for by committees. For example, the youth representatives voted for by the district, parish, and sub-county executive committees. And then for the PW representatives. They're also voted for by the parish, by the sub-county and the district executive committees. These are the people that vote these particular candidates. That's why we see very few people within the background. But then also on the other hand, the EC has started dispatching materials to different sub-counties, and they expect that by 3 a.m. early in the morning, they will have already started picking these materials from the sub-counties where they will have put them today, and then they will be distributing them to different polling stations. So that by 7 voting starts. Just if I can show you what is in just behind here, as you can see, these are some of the electoral officials getting ready, and you can see these vans. We see the trucks, because we see now that these trucks are already filled or packed with the materials to use, and they are ready. They are on the move just to go and distribute these materials to particular sub-counties where they will be picked from tomorrow. But then I also spoke to the EC returning officer here in Ntungamo, that is Charles Wafula, and he also had something to tell us. Let's listen in.
Kale. Very much, Bridget, for that update. We'll continue to see what is ongoing right there. As we take a very short commercial break right now, there is still a lot more lined up on NBS Live at 1.
Be classic by turning every wash into freshness with classic detergent powder, the high-performance washing solution for all your laundry needs. Toughest on stains, gentle on your hands, and keeps your clothes looking fresh and bright. Enjoy the long-lasting freshness of lavender and lily fragrances. Classic detergent powder is affordably priced, giving you unbeatable quality at a price you will love. Customer formulunji byera mu class ng'okozesa sabuni waffe ow'obuwunga classic. Genda kuduuka lyonna kuli okumpi oba supermarket osabe classic detergent powder. Classic detergent powder, experience a burst of freshness. Distributed by Chopper General Enterprises, located at shop number 3, Rafik Building, Chikovo, Kampala.
Energy for winners.
Welcome home to entertainment. To Wi-Fi everywhere. To high-speed internet. To security. To first-class support. To convenience. Welcome home to MTN WakaNet. Superior internet for every home. Visit www.mtn.co.ug/WakaNet. Welcome home. Together, we are unstoppable.
77 years ago, on 26th January 1950, a nation chose freedom, unity, and hope. A journey powered by courage, strengthened by diversity, and guided by democracy. This Republic Day, we celebrate not just a date in history, but the spirit that unites every Indian everywhere. From culture and community to music that truly feels like home. We invite all well-wishers around the world to join us in celebrating the spirit, unity and rich diversity of India. Call 0774 290 800 or 0773 061 613 for our special Republic Day packages. Celebrate this 77th Republic Day of India with Radio Wala Uganda. Radio Wala, let's play.
Up next. Brought to you by...
We now have Movitable Jelly, Aloe Vera, Avocado, and Papaya. Movit. All day confidence.
Welcome back. Thank you for keeping it to NBS Television. You're still watching NBS Live at 1. I am Mildred Tuhaise. Now, the former Ayivo Division Member of Parliament, Bernard Atiku, has lodged a petition to the Electoral Commission after he was defeated by Fiona Onzima in the Ayivo West Member of Parliament race. Atiku, who contested as an independent candidate, says there was widespread voter rigging across the constituency and thus he needs a rerun in this conversation. Let's get details from Joseph Omagor. Joseph, there are quite many requests and prayers coming in from the different persons who are petitioning the courts of law. Some are asking for a rerun, others are asking for vote recounts. What exactly is happening in Ayivo West?
West is, I think, expected in most of the constituencies. Because Bernard Atiku, who was running as an independent candidate, came out that he is not satisfied with the result, and also he is not satisfied with the tally that was done at the regional office, and which is also the city office of the Electoral Commission. So he went there to petition so that maybe he can have justice. He says the difference between is questionable because of the way the counting was done, and he said this is what he had said.
My complaint to the Arua City Electoral Commission office, if you recall very well, on the 16th is when the process here of tallying and declaration of the winners was concluded. And on that day, I was not satisfied with the way the process was handled. And indeed, I indicated very clearly that I would proceed to seek for justice, because this is supposed to be a free and fair electoral process. But what transpired here during the tallying and the declaration was not free and fair. It fell short of what the law says. And therefore, this is just the beginning of the process of seeking for justice. I was advised by the Legal Department of Electoral Commission to file a complaint indicating the grounds under which I am seeking for redress, which I have done. I thought I would deliver these complaints at the office here, which serves as Arua City Returning Officer's Office, and at the same time also as the regional office. But the returning officer has told me I am supposed to submit my complaint directly to the chairman, Electoral Commission in Kampala, and he will only be served with the copy of what I will have submitted the other side. So that's what exactly I'm going to do.
So it's really going to be an up. Zima is about 5,000 votes because of Zima got 11,000, around 11,000 votes, and then the second who was Matia got about 1,000, and Atiku rather got about 5,000. So it's a very big difference, and we'll see what will happen in the electoral commission, how they will solve this issue. But for now, back to you at the Political Command Center as we keep our tabs on the ground.
Thank you, Joseph Omagor. We'll definitely be waiting to see what comes out of there. And now we'll cross over to elsewhere in the world, where President Donald Trump is arriving in Davos for the World Economic Forum today and is scheduled to deliver a speech to the world leaders gathering right there. For more on what we can be able to expect from this visit, we're joined by DW correspondent Emily Leshner in Berlin. Emily, good afternoon from the Pearl of Africa. We share the same flag colors, but let's go to Donald Trump's visit. What is happening in Davos, and what can we anticipate to be in his speech?
Well, until very recently, President Trump had planned to talk about things like affordability and housing. But as tensions have escalated around the issue of Greenland, that has certainly changed. Trump is now reportedly going to speak about his intention to take the region through either a purchase or a seizure. Trump was asked last night how far he was willing to go to acquire Greenland, and he simply responded, "You'll find out." So this is the main, or one of the main, if not the main topic of discussion at Davos, and it's overshadowing a lot of the other conversations taking place there. There have also been reports that Trump might meet with leaders, EU leaders on the sidelines to discuss the issue of Greenland, but we don't have much else about that yet. And aside from this speech, Trump has invited CEOs from around the world to a reception he's hosting at the forum. But again, there are no specific details on what he plans to discuss with them.
All right, Emily, looking at the reaction, I would want to find out the reaction from the EU leaders at Trump's visit, but also just in case he continues with his intentional advances on Greenland, what do we expect to be the reaction coming in from the EU leaders or their next step of action?
Yeah. There has. Several leaders have made pointed remarks directed at Trump. Some are lamenting what, they perceive as an irreversible shift in Western democracies. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever said that his country wasn't sure it could count on the U.S. under Trump as an ally anymore. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney remarked that the old order was not coming back. Emmanuel Macron talked about how imperial ambitions are replacing democratic views. And then European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, yesterday, she delivered a strongly worded address to the forum yesterday, saying that Europe would be, quote, unflinching, united, and proportional in response to Trump's threats. Now, she's referring, of course, to the threat of a U.S. takeover of Greenland, but also to Trump's tariff threats. That's to increase tariffs on up to 25% on the 8 countries that sent troops to Greenland for an exercise, including Germany. And von der Leyen spoke about Europe's commitment to free trade. She pointed to Europe's success in securing trade agreements with India and Mercosur countries recently.
All right, thank you very much, Emily. We'll definitely keep tabs with you. Definitely would want to know what's coming out of that particular meeting right there and the reaction thereafter, especially after Trump's stance on Greenland. And that now brings us to the close of NBS Live at 1. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now we know that the presidential and parliamentary elections are totally done, and many of us are asking, when do we see a resumption of parliament and what will be the key issues that will be discussed? Right there, you can clearly see Parliament does resume. We have just a few minutes to the hour of 2 p.m. when we would expect Parliament to be resuming once again. And of course, it will be a conversation about paying last respects to the late educationist Geraldine Bitamazire much later on in the day. We'll be getting back to that conversation at a later stage. Thank you so much for joining us on NBS Live at 1. I am Mildred Tuhai. Say good afternoon and God bless you.
bwe yava ku mbalala ate awo yadde era abadde mutendesi mulungi ffenna tumanyi ng'omusambi n'omutendesi no one can dispute ebintu byasobodde okuba ng'akolera omupiira. I want to hear mpulire kikyayogedde ku mupiira guno, naawe ng'owuliriza tulabe oba ddala banaagugjayo.
waddewo ekintu kyetegeeza ekipya nno ekintu atandika okizimba okuva mu gw'omusanvu ne kati kigenda kivaayo mpola 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 mpola. Technical team eri ku Entebbe UPPC bali experience, Coach Abdallah eli experience nange ndi experience, especially mu gundi mu zino team ng'Entebbe ezakajja mbadde nazo. Naye that bit of fun is a goal. Omuwagizi kati watuusa alabira ddala bana tusobola otwala ekikopo naye ffe twatandika ne targets zaffe ku making sure nti ino team